these notes. Tomorrow, you guys will have a recorded video on long and synthetic division. I told you about that earlier in the week. It's really simple. I'm going to record that today, and I'll go ahead and post it today. I will not post your homework, but I will post that video so you can watch it early if you like. And then after you come in or come on tomorrow, we will not have a Zoom. You watch the regular Zoom, so you have to do your assignment tomorrow to get your attendance. Okay, is everybody good? Y'all understand that? Okay, y'all will go to tolls. Y'all will watch the video if you want to watch it tonight. I'm gonna try to post it third period today. So if you want to watch it tonight and then do your working class tomorrow, that's fine. All right. So it gives you an option if you forget your headphones. Maybe you've already watched it or whatever. All right. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. In general, when factoring, look for a GCF first. Remember, that's always our first step to factoring, so it'll make it a little bit easier. Then the number of terms should indicate how much to finish. Okay, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Also, be aware that many expressions and equations factor more than once. So we're going to do factoring, and we're going to do solving. I think we're doing both. Let me check and make sure that that is what I put in. We might have 2 days. Long and synthetic might be on Monday. I might have fixed it yesterday to change it up. Let me check and make sure, guys. Oh, no, tomorrow you're doing solving, so you're good. You're going to learn it all today. You're not going to have a recorded video. You're not going to have a recorded video. I just won't open the solving stuff till tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to do it all today. It's really easy all at one time. That's why I changed it up. Sorry, y'all. All right. So, Zoomers, are y'all seeing my notes still? Just give me a little yes or something. Yes, Zoomers?
Yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so the difference is we have higher powers. So before we were doing like squared and cubed, and if you look at C, it has a cubed, but it's going to change a little bit. The first thing you want to do is GCF. If we look, there's no numbers because it's 1, 10, and 24. There's no number in common in all three of those. There's no X, so this is normal. Anytime, let's make our chart. Our first thing is GCF. Then we have 2 terms, 3 terms, or 4 terms. This is the exact same as the other factoring that we did. We just have to do it multiple times, okay? So if it was 4 terms, we did grouping. So remember, we grouped the first 2 and the last 2 and took out the GCF. For 3 terms, we either did the cheater method. That was factors of the last that add to the middle. We did that chart. I showed you how to do the cheater method in your calculator and find those factors. Or we did slide and divide. And then for 2 terms, it'll be pairs and share. It could also be your cubic factors. And we'll go over all of this within this thing, okay? So we did factoring perfect cubes the other day, and then you had to solve them. That was the one that was crappy. It had one really good factor, and then one you had to solve using quadratic formula. So everything that we do today, we have already done. It's just more in the problem, okay? So instead of having 3 answers, we're gonna have 4, 5, 6 answers, okay? So it's, again, the same thing that you've already done. So this one has 3 terms. There's no GCF. There's no number in front, so we're going to use the cheater method. So we're going to find factors of 24 that add to -10. And right now we're just focused on factoring. Let me grab a calculator so you guys can see that. Sorry, I'm using my calculator. Do y'all need one, Paula? All right, so remember how I taught you to do factors. You're going to go into y equals, put in the number that you're looking for, factors of 24, divide x. 24 divide x plus x. And then you look in your table for negative 10. So there's our negative 10. It's really blurry. I'll change it so you can see it. There you go. So our two factors are negative 4 and negative 6. Let me go back to y equals so that you guys can see that real fast. We did 24 divide x and 24 divide x plus x. And all you're going to do is change that number every single time, okay? So this is what we get. We had x to the 4th. Remember the ones that we were doing earlier? We had x squared. You split those up. So we're going to split it into x squared and x squared. And our factors are minus 4 and minus 6. So that's all we did in the very first one. Now, because we have squares, we could possibly factor again. So we want to factor again if we can. The way we do that is if we have two terms, we break it down. And it's either going to be pairs and shares, a GCF, or we're not going to be able to factor it, okay? So this first one, when I break it down, x, 2 and 2, I see pairs. Remember, we can do a minus. So I'm going to share an x and a 2. One is positive, one is negative. If we look at the second one, there's two x's, but there's not a pair here. So this one will not factor anymore. There's no GCF, so that's it. All right. Your next one is the exact same way. We don't have a number in front. There's no GCF. So we're going to find factors of the last. This time it's negative 25 that add to negative 24. So in your calculator, you're going to put in a negative 25. Make sure that you put the negative. It's going to look like this. We're going to look at our table for negative 24. So our factors are 1 and negative 25. Split your x's up. X squared and a positive 1. X squared and a minus 25. All right, so I'm glad we did this one. If I break down my x squared and my 1, I do have pairs, but remember it has to be a minus. So we can't factor added pairs. So that one just comes straight down. The other one is x, 5, and 5. It has a minus, so we can share those. An x in the front, a 5 in the back. One is positive, one is negative. It does not matter what order you have it in. Okay, you can have it in any order you want. All right, so let me show you solving really fast. These are easy. Remember, if it's x plus 2, what we're technically doing is setting it equal to 0. So we would subtract 2 and we get x equals negative 2. Or we can remember that if it's inside of parentheses, we change the sign. Okay, so the next one, I would do x minus 2 equals 0. Add 2. And I get positive 2. For the last one, we set it equal to 0. We add 6. We get x squared equals 6. You have to get rid of the square, so we're going to take the square root. Here's the thing. Remember, when you take the square root, there are two answers, positive and negative. And for this one, you can leave it as a square root of 6. You can give me the decimals. You can break down the square root. Y'all don't care. Okay? I don't care what you give me, just as long as it's the right answer. Okay? Here's what I'm looking for. This highest power tells you how many answers you should have. I should have 4, 1, 2, a plus is 3, a minus is 4. Okay? So in the end, when you're solving, you should have the same amount. Look at your next one. We're going to do x squared plus 1 equals 0. We're going to subtract our 1. We get x squared equals negative 1. We're going to take the square root. we get x equals plus or minus, and remember the square root of -1 is I. So that's two answers, a positive I and a negative I. I should have 4 answers when I finish. So here's 2. You can do the cheater method on these as well, or you can actually set them equal to 0. Subtract 5 on this one, and I get -5. Add 5 on this one, and I get +5. The factoring is the hard part. The solving is just easy algebra. Okay. All right, so let's look at the last one that we have right here. We're going to do more, but this is the last one so far. We need to first pick out a GCF. If we look at this one, I don't ever want a negative in front. That makes it really hard to factor, so get rid of the negative. And then both of them have a factor of 3. 27 is divisible by 3. And they both have an x. If you can't see it, break it down. 27 is 3, 3, and 3, and x. So they have a 3 and an x. Which would leave you with -x squared plus 9. But I don't want this negative in there. So I'm going to pull it out, which leaves you with x squared minus 9. Okay. Typically, if you still have a higher power than 1, you can keep factoring. On this one, if we break it down, x, x, 3, and 3, you can see that we have pairs, and it's a minus. So we're going to share x and a 3, x and a 3. One is positive, one is negative. To solve these, set them equal to 0. For the first one, you just divide by -3, which gives you 0. There's one of your 3 answers. I don't have to see the work on these two. If you guys just change the signs, that is fine, like we've been doing before. The next one is -3. Add 3 to both sides, and we get x equals +3. I'll give you a minute to write that down. All right. To find the y-intercept, set x equal to 0. To find the x-intercept, set y equal to 0. Your x-intercepts are your solutions, and we'll talk about that when we get to the actual solving set of notes. Okay. So y-intercept, set x equal to 0. X-intercept, set y equal to 0. All right. I'm not going to graph these right now. We'll talk about graphing them, especially when we get to our notes. Actually, I'm going to just show you. Let me do this. Stop sharing. Let me open Desmos for you so you can see it. This is why we're not doing the graphing notes, because you guys can just put them into Desmos. So now I'm going to share my screen. This one is 2x to the third minus 8x squared plus 8x. So you guys can see the graph. Let me move us out of the way. I don't know if you can see it or not, but we're going to move out of the way. All right. It asks for how many x-intercepts. How many times does this cross the x-axis? 2. That's it. That's all you got to do on that. So then it asks you for relative max and min. So we've already talked about that. You can point at this maximum and you can see the actual coordinate. And then you can point at the minimum and see the actual coordinate. So there is no point in me doing an entire lesson on how to put this graph in and saying it. So I'm going to write that down, and when I get back to the notes, I'll show you what I put. There are 2 x-intercepts. There is 1 relative maximum and 1 relative min. Okay, so if you want to fill in A, B, and C, that's what it is. If we look at the next one, We have negative x to the fourth minus 7x to the third minus 12x to the second. How many x-intercepts do we have? 3. How many relative maximums? So everywhere that it peaks at the high, there's one and there's one. So it actually has 2 relative maximums. And then if I zoom it out a little bit, how many minimums does it have? Just one. And it didn't even ask you where they were. It just said, how many do they have? Okay. And Desmos is what you use on your final exam, so you'll be fine. All right. So then I'm going to go back. I'm going to make sure that I'm sharing this the right way. So on these, I didn't even graph them. I just wrote the numbers down. So if you guys want to write those down. I can move this back over now. All right. So again, I don't really care about the graphing. We're not going to graph it by hand. You're not going to graph it by hand on your final exam. You're just going to graph it in Desmos. All right, same thing for this one. So I'm not worried about it. We're going to move on from here. So then my next set of notes is solving, and that's what we're doing right now. I showed you the factoring and the solving at the same time. So we're going to do a few of these and then call it a day. So we're going to do some of the higher ones. We're going to start, remember the first thing we want to do is GCF. Then we either have 2 terms, 3 terms, or 4 terms. And that's already written on your other one, so I'm not going to make you rewrite it again. I'm just reminding you. So I'm going to start with the 2 terms for just a minute. So I'm going to start with number 2 because they seem like they look a little easier. But the reason that I'm really going to do it is so we can get some cubics in there, okay, and remind you about cubics. So if we look at this, we're going to factor just this part first, kind of ignore the 0 for a minute. Both of them have an x in common, so I'm going to take that GCF out. And that leaves me with x to the third plus 8. Those are those perfect cubes. So the cube root of x cubed is x, and the cube root of 8 is 2. So remember our formula, we're going to drop this GCF of x. Our formula said write what you see. So I saw x plus 2, and I'll rewrite these formulas after we finish this factoring right here. Then it said square the first, so we did x squared. Change the sign, multiply them together, square the last. Okay, we did a whole little section on that, a whole section of tests. You guys did well on that. All right, so one more time. If we had, let me find a good place to put it. I can put it right here. If we have a cubed plus b cubed, to factor that, we do a plus b, a squared minus ab plus b squared. Again, we already did all that. Remember, that was the one where you had a good factor. It was easy to make the answer. And then the second one, you had to use quadratic formula. So we're going to review quadratic formula as well. The first one, you set it equal to 0. That's your first solution. We have 4 of them. Okay, we have 4 solutions. So there's one. X plus 2 gives you a negative 2. So there's your second one. And then the third one is not factorable, so you have to use quadratic formula. So remember your quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus, I don't know what that is, the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You use your numbers. A is 1, B is negative 2, and C is 4. Change the sign of B. So I have B is negative 2, so we're going to change it to positive 2. Big fat square root. I told you I keep this one positive, so I'm going to just leave it positive 2 squared. Minus 4 times A is 1 and C is 4. All over 2 times A. Underneath, You're going to put that in your calculator, no square root sign. So 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4 gives you negative 12. Over 2. I showed you how to reduce this. I'm going to do it to the side over here. Remember, the negative means you pull out an I. Factors of 12 are 2, 2, and 3. I have a pair of 2's. So we do 2. I have an I. I left a 3. Okay, so that I always comes out because it's a negative. Over 2. And then the last step is your triangle of numbers to reduce that. 2 divided by 2 is 1, plus or minus 1i, square root of 3, over 1. Neither one of these ones are needed, so it's just 1 plus or minus I, square root 3. There's your other 2. 1 plus I square root of 3 is one of them. 1 minus I square root of 3 is one of them. All right, so I know I'm going kind of quick, but again, we've already done a test on this stuff, okay? So we're going to do a few more. It's going to be a long day. Got it? It's going to be a long notes day. Let's look at number 4. It is the same way. I have 2 terms. 2 terms is either going to be pairs and share, or it's going to be cubics. So what I want to do, factors of 64, I already have pairs of 8, so I'm going to leave it like that. Any even number is going to be a pair. And then 1 is 1 and 1. Okay, so these are pairs and share, not cubics, pairs and share. Got it? The reason they're not cubics is because this. They may end up being. You're going to see in a minute, they're going to end up being. So I'm going to share it. An 8 and 3 x's, because I split it in half, and a 1. An 8, 3 x's and a 1. 1 is a minus, 1 is a plus. Both of these are perfect cubes, but the only difference in them is the sign change. And we talked about that when we did the last one as well. Okay. So cube root of 8 is 2. Cube root of x cubed is x. Cube root of 1 is 1. So your first factor is going to be what you see, 2x and a minus 1. Square the first. 2 squared is 4, and then x squared. Multiply them together, but change the sign, so plus a 2x. And then square the last. 1 times 1 is 1. The next one is going to be exactly the same with opposite signs. So this is 2x and a 1. Write what you see. I see a 2x and the sign was positive 1. Square the first, change the sign, multiply them together, square the last. Again, once you find these 2 answers, these 2 are opposite signs. That's the only difference, okay? So if we look at the first one, 2x minus 1 equals 0. We're going to add 1 and then divide by 2. So our first solution is 1/2. What is this one going to make? Negative 1/2. So I don't have to do the work. That's the good thing about these, is a lot of times you don't have to do all the work, okay? For these 2, pick one of them, do the quadratic formula, change the sign of that first number. That's all you have to do. So we're going to do that down here. X equals negative b would be negative 2, plus or minus the big fat square root. 2 squared minus 4 times a is 4 times c is 1. All over 2 times a. Do the underneath, 2 squared minus 4 times 1. Clean up that negative 12. We've already done that, right? So if you've already done the work, don't redo it, okay? Go back and check it out. We got from the top up here, negative 12 right here when we broke it down, was 2i square root 3 over 8. which reduces to -1 plus or minus 1i square root 3 over 4, or -1 plus or minus just I square root of 3 over 4. So there's 2 more of your 6 solutions. The only thing that's going to change on this one is it's going to give you a positive 1 plus or minus I square root of 3 over 4. There's your 5th and 6th solution. Don't do the work if you don't have to. Okay? And I am okay with that. So once you get that, you don't have to worry about it. How many terms does the other 2 have? 1 and 3. How many terms do we have? How many different numbers do we have? 4. So it's a 4 term, so we're going to group it. Check the GCF first. On number 1, there's not a GCF. So we're going to group first and last. Then you do GCF. So between these 2, they have an x squared in common, which leaves x plus 5. Between the back 2, they have a negative and a 3 in common, which leaves x plus 5. You guys see your x plus 5's match. That means you did it right. And then you write your leftover, x squared minus 3. These are super easy to solve. We have x plus 5. If you have to write it out, do that. Subtract 5 and get -5, or just change that sign. It's whatever you want to do. When I solve this one, I'm going to add 3. I get x squared equals 3. This is where typical people get it wrong, like they will get it wrong. Because when I square root, I forget that there's 2 answers. Make sure that you know that there's 2. How many answers should we have? Our highest power is 3. 1, 2, 3. If you just give me the positive, you're going to miss a third of the problem. Number 3 is exactly the same way. It is exactly the same way. So I have 4 terms. I don't have a GCF. So I'm going to group them up. Okay. Make this bigger so y'all can see both at the same time. I can take out x squared from this first one. They both have 2 x's. At least we have x plus 2. In the second one, I can take out a positive 5. And at least we have x plus 2. We have an x plus 2 in common, so that's our first factor. And we left x squared plus 5. Now it's just solving them. X plus 2 is going to be -2. You don't have to show the work on that, or you can. It's up to you. The second one, you're probably going to have to show your work, so we're going to subtract 5. We get x squared equals -5. We take the square root to solve. Remember, anytime we have a negative underneath, we're taking the I out, which gives us a positive 5. Remember that there are 2 answers. So I'm going to rewrite it so you can see it. There's a positive negative I square root 5. The 5 will not reduce. So 1, 2, 3 answers. That's what we should have had. All right. So again, one more time, just to remind you, today you're only doing factoring for your homework. Tomorrow you'll finish up by solving. So today you will stop right here. This is all I need for today. Tomorrow you will do the rest of it. Okay. But I'm teaching you all at the same time. It's the same thing. All right. That one's really ugly. Let's look at number 6. The only reason I like number 6, we have 6 x's. 64 is 8 and 8. We already talked about this. So we have pairs and share for our 2 terms. We have x cubed in the front. One is going to be positive. One is going to be negative. How many answers should we have in the end? 6. So we got to keep factoring, okay? We got to keep factoring because this is not going to give us 6 answers. These are perfect cubes. So x and 2, x and 2. They're either going to be perfect squares or perfect cubes, or you're not going to be able to factor them at all. How do I know they're perfect cubes? They got cubes, okay? All right. So the first one, keep the sign x plus 2. Square the first, change the sign, multiply them together, square the last. Same thing on the last one, it's just going to be opposite signs. So remember that when we do cubes, they're opposite signs. The first one is going to give you a -2. This third one over here is going to give you a +2. We only have to work out one of these because the other one's going to change the sign. Okay, so you only have to work out one. So x equals -b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Pretty sure we've already done this one. 2 squared, right there it is, minus 4 times both of these. It's the same thing. Remember that -12 was 2i square root 3 over 2. And again, we've already done all this work. If you see that on another page, just write down the answer. You don't have to keep doing the work over and over again. Reduces to 1 plus or minus 1i square root of 3 over 1, but we don't need these two ones. 1 plus or minus I square root of 3. There's 2 more of your answers. And then how will this one change? What will it be? -1 plus or minus I square root of 3. Don't do the work if you don't have to. Okay? Don't know if y'all have ever heard that before. Don't do the work. If there's one in your homework that we did in our notes, you can use that. That's fine. Okay. All right. So the only difference in the rest of them is that they get just a little bit bigger. But let's look at some of these that are 3 terms just to review. I don't know that there's, let me look and see what's happening on the back page. Yep, we're good. So these are the only 5 we have left. We're not going to do all 5 of them. Okay. All of these are 3 terms and they all work different ways. So we're going to do one of the 4s. So one of 8 or 10, one of 5 and 9, and probably 7. So 3 more problems. Bear with me. Okay. So number 8, we have 10, 29, and -72. And they don't have any factors in common because 10 is 2 or 5. 29 is not divisible by 2 or 5. So that's it. No GCF, no X in all of them. So this one is going to be slide and divide. That's why I want to do this one. So we have x to the 4th plus 29x squared. And remember, we're multiplying. So 720. I don't know those factors. I don't expect you to. So factors of the last, that add to the middle. So I'm looking for a positive 29. I'm so close. Right there. -16 and 45 are my 2 factors. So we're going to split it. X to the 4th splits into x squared and a -16. X squared and a positive 45. Remember, if it's a negative, we're going to try to factor it. 16 is 4 and 4. So we'll have x minus 4 and x plus 4, pairs and share. For this one, it's a plus. Remember, pluses don't factor, okay? So if it's squared, it don't factor. So that's our factor here. This answer is just going to be a positive 4. This answer is going to be -4. And the last one you're probably going to have to work out. We're going to subtract our 45. We get x squared equals -45. So we square root it. And then I want you to clean this up. You know how to do it because we did it in quadratic formula. A -45 is going to pull an I out. 45 is 9 times 5 or 3 times 5. Remember, there are 2 answers to a square root. 3i, and I left a 5. We should have 4 answers. 1, 2, 3, 4. We will not do number 10. Let's go ahead and do number 9 since it's right here next to this 8. 3 terms, look for a GCF. 27 breaks into 3, 3, and 3, but 8 is not divisible by 3, so there's no GCF. So we're doing our slide and divide. 27 times 8 is 216, so x to the 6 minus 215 x to the third minus 216. If you don't know this, put it in your calculator, but you're going to get a negative 216 and a positive 1. The difference in this one is that it made the cubes, which we did on the other page, okay? So this is going to be one of the longer problems. I'm going to finish factoring it, and then we're not going to solve it, okay, because it takes forever. So the cube root of x cubed is x. Remember, to find the cube root of a big number, if you don't know it, you hit math and number 4, math and number 4, and the cube root of 16 is 6. The other one is x and 1. Okay. So for the first one, we do what we see, x minus 6. Square the first, change the sign, multiply them together, square the last. For the x and 1, write what you see, x plus 1, x squared minus x plus 1. If you have to put the 1 on there, that's fine as well. This first one is going to be easy. It's going to be a positive 6. This one is going to be a negative 1. Both of these, you're going to have to use quadratic formula on. And I don't want to waste too much more of your time showing you quadratic formula. You should already know it. Okay. So that will give you your 6 solutions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got it? So I just wanted to show you how to factor. So again, today, this is what I want to see. Tomorrow, when I'm not with you, you're finishing it out. Okay. We're going to go up to number 7, and that's the last one that we're going to do. Remember, we don't want to lead with a negative, and then do you see anything in common? Say again. Check again. What do they all have? An x. We don't want the negative, and we want to take out that in common x. So what that's going to do is change all the signs and minus an x from each one. So it's going to be a positive 3, and then it's going to change to x squared. It's going to be a positive 14, and you're going to reduce it by 1x. And then it's going to be a negative 8 with no x because I took that out. When we factor, keep bringing down that negative x. Don't forget it. That'll get you points off if you're not careful. This is going to be a slide and divide. So we get x squared plus 14x minus 24. I need factors of negative 24. And y'all, I might have messed up the other one. So make sure you're following this one for slide and divide, because I don't think I divided on the other one, and nobody called it, but I just did. So, and we all make mistakes, so don't stress out about it. Just leave it how it is and follow this one. What happened on this one? Do I have a factor of negative 24? No. So this one is not factorable. So today, when you get this, if it's not factorable, this is going to be your answer. If you're solving, set this equal to 0, divide by negative 1, you still get 0. This one you would do in quadratic formula. All right, so let me go back for a minute. Here's what I screwed up. Here I did slide, but then I didn't divide them. I did not divide them. So this problem is actually wrong. So let's look at number 10. Okay, don't stress about it. Everything about how you solve is right. It's just not the right factors. So let's look at number 10 and then I'll leave you alone. That's my fault. I completely apologize. 15, 17, and 42 do not have a GCF. So we're going to slide it over. We get x to the 4th minus 17x squared minus 630 Please remind me to divide. I do that all the time. I expect you guys to make that mistake every now and then, so don't stress out too much, okay? Factors of negative 630. That add to negative 17. We get x minus 35, x squared minus 35, and x squared plus 18. I did slide. This is where I screwed up. Make sure you divide. Okay, so I did not do that on the last problem. I'm admitting that I made that mistake. That's fine. You're probably going to make that mistake at some point. All right. Reduce those. So if I reduce divisible by 5, I get 7 and 3. This one's divisible by 3, I get 6 and 5. Remember, when it doesn't simplify, then we pull that up there. So today, your two factors would be 3x squared minus 7. These will not factor anymore because they're not perfect squares. Your other one is 5x squared plus 6. Again, will not factor anymore because they're not perfect squares. So then we just set them, this is what you're doing today. Then we just set them equal to 0. 3x squared minus 7 equals 0. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. Divide by 3. And you guys can just give me that big fraction right there. So when you square root it, you can just leave it like this. We don't do rationalization. You don't know what that is, but we don't do it. So don't worry about it. Leave it just like this or give me the decimal. Okay. Got it? The next one, same thing. 5x squared plus 6 equals 0. Subtract your 6. Divide by 5. Now this one is negative, so the only difference in this one, you're going to have plus or minus. It's negative, so I'm going to pull out the I. You can leave it as 6 over 5, or you can change it to the decimal. I do not care. So there's 2 answers, 4 answers. Okay, so they get really nasty when you have to slide divide. Any questions on that? One more time. Today, all you're doing is factoring. Okay, all you're doing is factoring, not solving. Tomorrow, you already know how. I'll post that tomorrow, and then you'll finish solving. Got it? Monday, we'll do long and synthetic division. So I'm going to stop sharing, stop recording.